Dmitri returned home late into the night. The whole day had been a blur of swaying train cars, and his mind held only one thought: finally holding his wife. He'd missed her terribly. What happiness it is to come back to the one you love. Their son was away at summer camp. Only she was at home. Silence, a soft light in the hallway, the familiar smell of home. He stepped quietly into the bedroom, not turning on the light so as not to wake his wife. Someone was sleeping under the blanket. A warm female form. Dmitri gently pressed himself against her from behind, embraced her, inhaled the familiar scent of her shampoo. The girl didn't resist, only whispered something unintelligible and nestled closer. Dmitri smiled. He thought it was his Jenna. But what if the one in your arms isn't the person you were waiting for at all? A few minutes later, an unexpected phrase shattered the silence in the room. You know, I'd always hoped this would happen someday. A voice said that wasn't Jenna's. He jerked back sharply and switched on the light. Before him lay Natasha, his wife's younger sister, smiling calmly. She was wearing Jenna's nightshirt. Stunned, Dmitri got up from the bed. What are you doing here? Where's Jenna? Natasha stood up, smoothing her tousled hair. Jenna got called in for an emergency night shift at the hospital, to cover for someone. I was just visiting, family stuff, stayed late and... Well, you see, why did you get into our bed? What's the big deal? Jenna and I used to sleep in the same bed when we were kids. She offered. You came in and didn't even figure out who was here. Not that I minded, Natasha added with a smirk. Dmitri was in complete shock. What had just happened, he had perceived as a moment of intimacy with his beloved wife, but it turned out he didn't even know how to assess it now. This was a mistake, he whispered. A mistake. Natasha took a step closer. Are you sure? Because No, I've had feelings for you for a long time. You get it. I won't say a word. Just be with me sometimes. No strings attached. Like now. He was silent, unable to find the words. Something painful tightened in his chest. He knew if he said yes, he'd fall into a trap. If he said no, he might lose everything. If Jenna finds out, he began. She won't. Just don't let me down, Dima. I'm alone because of you. Still, you were and still are special to me. He wanted to leave, to erase this evening from his memory. But he took a step not toward the door, but back toward the bed. From that morning on, Dmitri began living in two parallel worlds. In one, he remained the exemplary husband, the caring father, the man everyone knew and respected. In the other, everything was different. Phone calls on the way home from work, brief meetings at Natasha's apartment, her whispers, the oppressive silence, and the guilt that slowly but surely ate away at him from the inside. Natasha kept her word. Not a single hint, not a drop of suspicion. Jenna knew nothing, trusted them both, and that only made it worse. Once, returning from a business trip, Dmitri dialed Natasha's number instead of calling Jenna. She picked up immediately, as if she'd been waiting. I made your favorite pork chops, she said matter-of-factly, as if talking about something completely normal. He came over, had dinner, stayed. Natasha was in loungewear, barefoot, with a blanket over her shoulders, and spoke quietly, as if afraid to shatter the fragile illusion they had both sunk into. I feel so good with you, she confessed once. Not like something forbidden, but like with the person it was always supposed to be real with. He didn't know what to say. After all, he himself had started wondering, what if? Maybe it all really was a mistake? Maybe I chose the wrong one? Maybe Jenna is just habit, and Natasha is real feeling? But every time he crossed the threshold of his home, he saw Jenna's eyes, his son's smile as he rushed to hug his neck, and everything inside turned over again. One day, Jenna, holding a cup of tea, suddenly remarked, Haven't you noticed that Natasha seems to be glowing lately? He froze. No, I hadn't noticed. Why? Yeah, she's like she's blossomed. Looks at things differently. Seems calmer. And I'm happy for her. She deserves to be happy. His heart clenched with pain. That was the moment he almost confessed everything. But Jenna spoke with such boundless trust and sincerity that he fell silent again. And then, after one of those meetings, Natasha, gently stroking his hand, said, "Dima, we're going to have a baby. Actually, two. The doctor said it's twins." Time seemed to stop. He looked at her as if seeing her for the first time. She said it lightly, with a quiet joy, like a woman certain that this was good and that he was now with her. "Are you serious?" He exhaled. "Absolutely. Now you're with me forever, right?" He didn't answer because he didn't know what to say. Everything had gained a terrifying reality he wasn't ready for. Everything was rolling down a well-worn path. Dmitri no longer divided his days into with Natasha and with Jenna. He just lived, as if acting in two plays at once. But one day everything fell apart. It was an ordinary night. Jenna was on duty at the clinic. Natasha, now heavily pregnant, was back in the hospital for observation, the same hospital where her sister worked. Dmitri hadn't even considered that everything could align like this, but it did. That night, Jenna couldn't sleep, troubled by a vague unease. She decided to walk the floor, get some air, stretch her legs, and suddenly heard voices in the on-call room. One was painfully familiar, Val, her ex-fiancé. The second was Natasha. Curiosity got the better of her. She carefully opened the door a crack and froze. Natasha was sitting in a chair. Val was next to her. He was holding her hand, whispering something, and Natasha was smiling. Too confidently, too tenderly. Jenna recoiled. She stood for a second, not believing her eyes. Then she took out her phone. One photo, one short, soundless video, but with emotions that spoke louder than any words. Back in her room, she stared at the screen for a long time, then forwarded the recording to Dmitri. The caption was concise. "Look how sweetly your love is spending her time. Best of luck." On the other end of the line, Dmitri almost dropped his phone. He rewatched the video 3 times. He recognized that chair, recognized Val, and understood something had gone wrong. Catastrophically wrong. Everything inside knotted up. Did she know from the start and was now getting revenge? Or was she set up? He couldn't close his eyes. He didn't know whom to fear more now. Jenna? Val? Or himself? In the morning, Jenna came home. Calm, even too calm. Dmitri met her at the entrance. She looked him straight in the eye and asked coldly, "So, Dima, are you happy now?" He wanted to say something, to justify himself, to ask how she found out. But Jenna just gave a bitter smile. "You know what's the scariest part? I always believed you. That's what hurts the most." She walked past him, not waiting for an answer. And suddenly, a thought rang in Dmitri's head with perfect clarity. "You lost, and now you'll have to pay." Jenna left. She simply packed up their son, left the keys on the console table, and didn't say another word. Dmitri sat in the kitchen of the empty apartment. His hands were shaking. He desperately wanted to turn everything back, but he understood. The final period had already been placed, and he wasn't the one who placed it. A couple of days later, he went to see Natasha. She greeted him joyfully with a radiant smile. "Well, now you're completely mine." He was silent. "I told you, Dima. She wasn't the one for you. She never appreciated you, and I always waited for you. And now everything will be different." He looked at her and for the first time saw her not through the eyes of a man lured into a net, but through the eyes of a man who had just lost everything. "Natasha," he said quietly, "tell me honestly, did you know Jenna would see you with Val?" She froze for a second, then smiled slightly. "You think I was just sitting in that on-call room for no reason? Val's not a fool." He understood everything immediately. Dmitri pulled away. His heart sank. So it was all a game. All the love, all the tears, all this pregnancy. "You used me, Natasha?" "No," she answered calmly. "I just took what was mine. Everything that seemed like chance to you was destiny to me." He stood up. "I'm leaving." "Where?" She frowned. "To Omaha. There's a branch office of my plant there. There I'm nobody. And maybe that will give me a chance to start everything over. And the children? If they're really mine, I won't abandon them. But there will be nothing between you and me." Natasha stood there, pale, her hands trembling. Dmitri didn't look back. He simply left and, perhaps for the first time in his life, made his own choice. 3 months passed. He rented a small apartment in Omaha, worked, and didn't talk to anyone. One evening, there was a familiar knock at the door. On the threshold stood Jenna with their son. "Hi," she said quietly. "Our son and I have nowhere to live. You can." He didn't know what to say, but silently nodded. And in that moment, he understood. Sometimes the ones who come back aren't the ones you called for, but the ones you don't deserve. But they come anyway. The end. Love isn't only about passion and choice. It's about forgiveness and about those who return when you're already completely lost.